Baldwin celebrated his new lordship of Edessa. 150 miles to the southwest, the main Crusader army arrived at the great walled city of Antioch. Since the time of the Apostle St. Peter, it had become a thriving Christian city. But in 1085, the Turks had seized control. This was a prize second only to Jerusalem, a prize worth dying for. The splendor of Antioch is hard to see today. The once majestic city now lies in ruins in the hill country of eastern Turkey. But in 1097, for one knight who had now spent a year on crusade, the ancient capital was an awe-inspiring sight.
The city is surrounded by two walls, one of which is very high and amazingly broad. It's built with huge stones, and there are set up on it 450 towers. It's shut in by 4 mountains, and alongside the city walls runs a deep river. And everything about the city is beautiful.
I think the Crusaders want to take the city for a whole range of reasons. First and probably foremost is strategic. Antioch is literally the gateway to Syria and the gateway to the Holy Land. If they leave the city behind them, their route for escape and certainly their route for resupply and reinforcement is going to be cut off. Spiritually, it's almost the equal of Jerusalem in many ways as a goal, because Antioch was, in Christian tradition, the site of the founding of the very, very first Christian church by St. Peter, the Apostle of Christ. So this gave it a real spiritual power and a spiritual cachet that I think the Crusaders were very empowered by.
The majority of Antioch's inhabitants were Armenian and Greek Orthodox Christians. Their Turkish rulers granted them total freedom to worship, but this was not enough for the Crusaders outside the city walls. They wanted to remove the Turks from power and return the city to Christian rule. But taking it back wouldn't be easy.
Antioch is a very well-defended city indeed. The walls surrounding the city, here high on the mountain, going down to the plain, are very massive. You can see that, the construction here, a strong, stout, thick inner core, faced with this fine exterior, reinforced of course with a system of towers. The towers interlock with one another. This is the kind of wall you don't shift with a battering ram.
It wasn't only Christian chroniclers that recorded the tale of the bloody struggle for Antioch. Ibn al-Athir travelled far and wide collecting tales of the great Muslim heroes who resisted the Crusaders, the Franks, as he called them. His celebrated history tells of the spirited Turkish leader of Antioch, Yagisiyan.
Yagisiyan, the ruler of Antioch, showed unparalleled wisdom and courage, strength and judgment. If all the Franks who died attacking his city had survived, they would have overrun all the lands of Islam.
Ibn al-Athir would recount how Yagisiyan, a man fabled for his big hairy ears and thick grey beard, did his utmost to keep the enemy out. But he knew one of the city's Christians might be persuaded to let the Franks in.
When he heard the approach of the Franks, he was not sure how the Christian people of the city would react. So he sent all the Muslims outside the city walls to dig trenches. And the next day, he sent the Christians by themselves to do the same task. When they were ready to return home at the end of the day, he refused to allow them in. "Antioch is yours," he said, "but you have to leave it to me until I find out what happens between us and the Franks."
Yagisiyan believed he had made Antioch unassailable. He then turned his attention to the Crusader army amassing outside his city's walls.
Yagisyan is praised by all the sources about his good organization of the defense, night and day, night shifts, night guards, throwing oil at the Crusaders, depriving them from food supplies, sending guards during the night to attack their camps, burn some of their tents, depriving them of water supplies. He really confronted the Crusaders alone, and he fought vigorously to defend his city.
His efforts made life miserable for the besiegers. After 8 arduous months, the Crusaders were no closer to getting in, and conditions in the camp were desperate. Food had always been scarce, and they had the expelled Christians to feed as well. As the siege dragged on, the Crusaders had virtually nothing left to eat. The Christian chronicler William of Tyre told how the Crusaders were forced to drain the blood from their own horses and drink it.
Day by day, the shortage of provisions continued and the famine grew. And as a result, a pestilence broke out among the legions in the camp, so fatal that there was now scarcely room to bury the dead. With the loss of those who had wasted away through hunger and disease, and of others who had perished by the sword, the army had diminished to such an extent, it seemed as if barely half our numbers had survived.
When it seemed the situation could get no worse, it did. In a medieval Islamic text, Dr. Taif al-Azari has discovered how Yagisyan was able to summon reinforcements right under the nose of the Crusaders.
The answer was this: a pigeon. The Seljuk Turks were the first one to invent the postal service, kind of DHL of today. They will attach a message to the bird's leg and set it free. In a matter of hours, the message will come across and the help will arrive from anywhere in the Muslim world.
Two months later, Christian scouts reported that a massive Turkish army was on its way. The Crusaders had run out of time. They needed to break into the city quickly. It was Bohemond who found a way into the city's defenses, a traitor in the Muslim ranks.
He was an armorer, a maker of breastplates named Firuz. He worked at the tower that stood over the riverbed where the water flowed from the city into the valley. He had long served the ruler of Antioch, Yagisyan. But he sealed a pact with the Franks. They bribed him with a fortune in money and lands.
Firuz was the commander not only of one tower, but of 3 towers. Bohemond really hit gold dust. For whatever reason, he was ready to betray the city. And as so often happens, it was betrayal that let the enemy in, not a storming of the city.
All the preparations were made. Towards dawn, the knights and the foot soldiers began to approach the towers of which Firuz was warden.
And our Captain Bohemond said to us, "Go on, strong in heart and lucky in your comrades, and scale the ladders into Antioch, for by God's will, this city shall be in our power in a trice."
What I'm looking for is what I've always wanted to find, which is Firuz's tower. Now, this is the foundation of a major tower, right on the angle of the wall where it plunges down to the south defences. And I don't think there can be anywhere else that this can be except the Tower of Firuz. The Crusaders had plenty of cover. They came up the hill beyond here, massed over this shelf. Thor's leaned over the wall and he swung a lantern.
We took the ladders and lashed them to the battlements of the city. An amazing number of men began to climb.
But then, of course, disaster. The ladder broke.
It was too late to turn back now. More Crusaders were scrambling up the remaining ladders into Firuz's tower. Within minutes, they were streaming down the battlements into the city and opening the gates for the rest of the men waiting outside.
They flung the gateway open and the men funneled into the city.
8 months of starvation and disease left the Crusaders in no mood for mercy. Helped by the few Christians left in Antioch, they slaughtered the remains of the garrison and killed Muslims indiscriminately wherever they found them.
The shrieks of countless people rose, making a terrifying noise throughout the city. But Bohemond did not waste any time on this account and ordered his glorious banner to be carried and set up on top of a wall opposite the citadel. Every street on every side was full of corpses, so that no one could endure to be there because of the stench. Nor could they walk along the narrow paths of the city, except over the bodies of the dead.
Everyone really was really massacred, was killed. The Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, and then sparingly children or women or elderly, and they were really avenging and proving that they are really superior and they are the true and new master to the territory.
One inhabitant of Antioch the Crusaders didn't manage to find was its Turkish ruler, Yagisian. He managed to escape.
Yagisian was told they had taken the citadel. Panic seized him, and he opened the gates and fled with an escort of 30 pages. When he recovered his self-control, he repented having rushed to safety instead of staying there and fighting to the death. He started groaning and weeping. When he was at his last gasp, a shepherd passed by, killed him, cut off his head, and took it to the Franks at Antioch.